Father God, we thank you for all the things that you're doing in our lives. We pray that right now in this moment, your Holy Spirit fills us and that you speak through us and not ourselves. We pray that what you will to get passed on to these people in the world, just to come out of our mouths so that we can represent you and that we can make you a proud and happy Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. What's up, beautiful people? Shell here at A Radical Relationship, and we are back with another video. We are now in week 2 of marriage. Still enjoying our new home, enjoying kind of a less busy season right now, with things sort of starting to decline a little bit in terms of busyness with schedules, although I am in California this week.
Home to myself.
Yep, but we are making it work. So today Aaron and I thought that we would talk to you all about boundaries in dating and boundaries in marriage, what that looked like for us in our dating season, and then some of the precautions and parameters we put into place while dating that are spilling over into our marriage, just to really help keep it protected. So I think we should start with kind of going back to that first date.
So yeah, going back to our first date, me coming from a life of sin, clearly, not doing the whole waiting for marriage for sex or any of that, just, living in complete sin. So on our very first date, I asked Shell, hey, what would you think if I wanted to kiss you? And
first date, y'all. Yeah. First date, he all up on your girl, okay?
Yeah. No, but she really just threw me for a whirl, She was like, well, what are your intentions behind it? And I was like, well, dang, I had to back up, because I was like, well, what are my intentions about it? Are they pure? Which probably weren't. Really just goes back to being were my intentions pure? And I could probably say, no, they weren't.
Yeah, so for me, in my previous relationship, I had waited to kiss until my wedding day. So I had already contemplated if that was going to be a thing for me in the next relationship or not. And I was open to not waiting to kiss until my wedding day. But for me, it was just important that we just both had a conviction on what that was going to look like. So that was really my question. Oftentimes I don't think people think about it just oh, it's a harmless kiss, but at the same time it's sin always starts somewhere. And so for me it's just kind of okay, and then what's the boundary, what's the stopping point? So that was just kind of what I wanted to get him thinking about with the question, which I think it did. And so that just kind of prompted more conversation around, okay, so if we do decide that we're gonna kiss in this relationship, what is that going to look like, and what's going to be the boundary there? So I don't even remember
well, I think first off, it's important to identify who has the stricter convictions, who has more convictions in the relationship, where you're setting boundaries. Clearly in our relationship, that was Shell. She felt a little more convicted about certain things that I didn't. But we were able to guard ourselves because of that. So I think identifying who, and it could be vice versa. I like to think that maybe men have more issue with lust and control, but it could be the opposite, just depending on your personal relationship, and identifying who has, the stricter convictions so that you guys can identify what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, so kind of our dynamic was I tended to be the one super strict about things or conservative. Aaron tended to be more liberal about things. But what happened is it just created opportunity for us to have a discussion about why we both are the way that we are in that area, and then how are we going to meet in the middle for something that works for us. So for example, with the kissing thing, we did end up kissing before marriage, but then we had to really set a boundary, which for us, the boundary was like, at what point does it become lust? Which for us was typically like, if we get to making out and things are feeling like they're getting hot and heavy, it's moved from just like an affectionate type thing to a lustful type thing. And that's when we know that we've crossed the line that isn't necessarily pleasing to God. Weren't always perfect in not crossing that line, but we knew that that's what the line was for us, that like, okay, the point that it starts to get like super passionate, it's giving lust, and that we needed to back up.
Yeah, I think another thing that helped me was, you know, being able to identify that we're both doing ministry, wanting to help people in this, you know, advertise our relationship and how it's working. I was like, man, you know, we have to set a good example. We have to live above reproach. If we're going to be talking to other people about this, you know, I have to be living it out myself. And like you said, we weren't always perfect, but we did also make sure that we didn't cross certain lines. And we put, you know, strongholds or in place to prevent that. You know, for instance, like I think one of the first times we made out was the movie theater. We went and saw, what was it? What movie was it?
I remember. It was like a Michael B. Jordan movie with him and the lady getting married or something.
But anyways, we, you know, that set a boundary for us. We were like, okay, you know, this probably isn't a good environment for us to be going on dates. So we tend to do things more like bowling, watching, or going out to eat, you know, going for walks, things that wouldn't place us in areas where we'd be tempted to sin.
Yeah, for sure. We also had like kind of built-in boundaries because of Aaron's job. So for those of you who didn't get a chance to check out our testimonies, do go back and check those out. But Aaron was coming out of recovery program, and when he finished that program, he decided to stay on for a year staff. And because he was working on site with other men who were still in the program, he had to continue to adhere to the rules because he was a staff member there. So there was a time that he had to be back each day. Yeah. So that kind of helped us out because he had to leave by a certain time anyway. So when the time came and there was no longer any curfew and he didn't have to be back on site by a certain time, we were kind of already used to like, hey, you gotta head out. So that never really presented an issue for us in that way because we were used to him having to be back. So I know that not everyone under normal circumstances is going to have something like that built in, but that is a really good boundary to like have that set time of like, hey, you gotta go because after this time it's a dangerous area.
Yeah, it was early too. I think the first couple months was like 6, and then it turned into 8 o'clock on the reg. But it was definitely a good thing. Like Shell said, you know, helped us, prevented us from falling into deeper sin, you know, because they say nothing but good happens after midnight.
Definitely not after midnight. That's way too late in my opinion. The other thing was that something that I did in this relationship that I wouldn't have done and didn't do in my last relationship is there were a couple times that we slept under the same roof when we would go like visit his parents and things like that. And that's probably something in my past relationship I would have been like, absolutely not, whatever. But just like having worked things out more so with God, one, just having that accountability, like having people in my life who knew like, hey, we're heading to Nashville this weekend. Hey, we're staying with his parents, but we're sleeping in separate rooms, or having people to be able to check in as needed. So that I feel like that's a good example of like, previously I wouldn't have been open to anything like that, and it was definitely about being above reproach and things like that. But even with his family, they knew that we were committed to staying pure as well, and we were open about that. So honestly, that wasn't really a struggle for us. Like even sleeping under the same roof, there was never really any temptation to have sex, and we never crossed any boundaries there. We just stuck to being in separate rooms and really honoring that. So I feel like that's one way that you all can see like it doesn't have to be so strict, you know, in ways that you don't feel like you can enjoy one another's company, but there can still be boundaries within the ways that you are enjoying each other that continue to keep that time pure.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one of my friends asked me a question like a couple weeks ago about how do you feel about traveling with someone you're just now dating, you know? And I was like, well, like Shel just said, you know, as long as you're putting those boundaries in place, like certainly not alone, you and just them, you know, that's not a safe bet. But if it's a trip with like, you know, a couple girls, a couple guys, y'all are sleeping in separate rooms, you have accountability partners that are going to hold you accountable, that's a different situation, you know? So like she said, we notified my parents, let them know, you know, what we're doing in the situation. So they were our accountability.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that we were thinking about as we were just talking about boundaries and dating were also boundaries in marriage and what it's looking like for us to set ourselves up for success in marriage. Aaron and I both have bad experiences in our past with the people that we were in relationships with and the opposite sex, and them being involved in relationships with people of the opposite sex that were not appropriate for anyone who was in a relationship. So off rip, we were both kind of like, we don't play that. Like, it just is what it is. Like, I really don't care how anybody else feels about same-sex friendships, and if people, for us, it don't work, you know? Like, personally, I feel like there is no male friend that I need who can't also be friends with Aaron. Like, he is my other half. I'm not really sure what purpose you need to serve outside of my husband, and vice versa. Aaron, I feel like some of his wounds were fresher than mine were in some ways. So I do feel like I had to be a little bit more careful and upfront and just like yield to that in different ways that he may not need to with me, because like Aaron don't be making no friend girls anyway. that's just not his MO. But me, I'm an extrovert, I'm outgoing, I talk to everybody, things like that. So there were situations that came up where I need to like give him a heads up or see how he felt about things like that, because I knew that that could be more sensitive. Even though I knew my intentions were completely pure, I just wanted to honor him in that way because of those old wounds.
Yeah, so it's important that you guard yourself in that aspect. I think one time when we were dating, Shel called me and asked me, hey, you know this guy from church needs a ride home. He actually lives down the street from me. And I was like, nah, I ain't having it. I know your heart is in the right place, but there's other people that can give him a ride. You know what I'm saying? And there's plenty of aspects plenty of things that go into that. You know, one is protection. Her and another man alone, that's just, you should never set yourself in a situation, set yourself up for failure. Really just, that's setting yourself up for failure. There's no reason that I should ever be alone with another woman. There's no reason that she should ever be alone with another man. But also in the protection aspect, you know, like, I don't know that guy. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm very protective. And Shel, you know, for her to guard herself in that manner, I was like, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of guys that can give that guy a ride. If I was with her, it'd be different. You know, one of my friends asked us for a ride home from church, but it was me and Shel together. So that was very different. Yeah, okay, that's cool, man. We'll give you a ride home. But I think that's important. And also that you begin to practice these things. If you're intentionally dating, which we hope you all are, you know, dating with the intention of getting married, that you start to practice these things before you get married. For instance, you know, I think Shel, towards the beginning of our relationship, she added me on Find My iPhone, you know, yeah. Instantly, like, but I didn't have,
period.
It didn't bother me, you know. I was open about it. I was like, okay, like, I see you. Like, you're willing to show me, and I'm willing to show you that, you know, we can be responsible and look out for one another and have those intentions in place.
Yeah. So really quickly, just back to the male-female friendships thing. That's not black and white, right? Like, we are very clear on what does and doesn't work for us. So it's black and white for Shel and Aaron. Pun intended, black and white. But that's not a black and white thing. So we are in no way saying like, hey, you shouldn't have friends. As for us, as they say, as for me in my house, yeah. It don't work like that. But you know, that is definitely something that can vary from relationship to relationship. So hear us say that it's black and white. For us, for you all, do your thing. But based on previous experiences, we are crystal clear on what we feel that needs to look like in this relationship. I love that Aaron brought up like the Find My iPhone thing, because honestly, like, that was just really sincere. It wasn't even, oh no, like, let me keep tabs on you, because I feel like anytime that you feel like you need to keep tabs, that's a red flag. It was actually out of convenience. Like, hey, when he was coming over to the house, I could just pull up Find My iPhone and be like, how close is he? When do I need to be ready? And vice versa. Like, if I'm coming to him, hey, where's she at? How? Even though Aaron would never use it, it would always be like, hey, where you at? I'm like, you can just use the app. But it was truly out of convenience. But I think the fact that both of us were really cool about it and laid back, and there was no like, whoa, what you need my location for, just kind of spoke to the fact that there was just complete transparency there. We have the codes to each other's phones. If somebody asks for a password to a device, shoot it out, because there's nothing to hide. Literally, we share all things and have all things in common.
Transparency is important, because, you know, my past relationships, that was never not such a thing. Like Shell was saying, you know, having those things in place, those contingencies, and saying, you know, having the other person in the relationship not being open to it. Oh, why do you need to track where I'm at? Oh, why do you need to see this? Oh, well, I'm texting whoever I want to text. You don't need to look at my phone. Like, pretty much, if you're getting defensive in those areas, because you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. Just period. Clear as day, you know, like, there's no reason that you shouldn't. And my intentions behind it shouldn't matter. If I'm asking Shell, hey, what are you doing? Who are you texting? You know, like, she never tries to hide from me. I don't try to hide from her, because I don't have anything to hide. But that's a clear warning sign for those of you that do have a spouse that's hiding those things. I mean, there's no reason behind it. Clearly, they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, because they don't want you to see it, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that always means that cheating is going on. I think that sometimes people have this thing where it's like, I deserve my privacy type thing, you know. And I just think like, but man, if you are in a situation where you are preparing for marriage, all of that is gonna go out the window one day. Like, when you get married, that ain't a thing. Like, there should be no reason that your spouse should not have access to those things, back to Aaron's point. But I don't think that it's always like somebody is cheating because it's going on. Sometimes people just want to hang on to their personal rights, you know, in a certain area. And it's like, that's cool, you know, I get it. It's your phone, and perhaps y'all are in a dating relationship, so you're not married. But the reality is that if you're dating intentionally, you ain't preparing well. Because all of a sudden that switch is gonna flip, and you're gonna have to go to like opening up the books for them completely on your life, if this is somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with. So regardless, like, you're not preparing well for a lifetime of transparency and vulnerability with someone if this is an area that's hard for you to sacrifice. Now, I think in both of our situations, there definitely was a case that like the reason you're not being open and transparent is because you up to no good. So that was our situations, but I also know of stories where a person just wants to hold on to kind of like their individualism, and that kind of defeats the purpose of relationship.
That's good. I think another area I like to talk about, you know, with having boundaries is, you know, me coming from a lifestyle of addiction and whatnot. You know, what does drinking look like for my life now? And this can go for anybody, you know. It's really just about being transparent with your wife, with your girlfriend, soon to be wife, whatever that may look like. You know, for us, you know, we talked about it, and our boundaries are, you know, we're not going to drink unless we're around one another, and it's, you know, we're together at the home or something on a date, because we know that we can both hold one another. You know, Shell doesn't struggle in that area, so I know that she can hold me accountable. Like, hey, babe, you know, one beer, it's enough. You know, when to tell me to stop. So I think that's really important. I can't say that always been the best at it. There was a couple times, you know, where I had a beer with one of my friends and Shell wasn't around, and I did feel convicted about it. She asked me, and at first I lied to her. I ended up telling her the truth. I'm a terrible liar. But it's just the fact that I had that conviction, you know, and it's about being transparent and open. Even if you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, it's important that you're open with your spouse about those things.
Yes, Aaron is certainly a terrible liar. But yeah, I think even in those situations, like, it didn't necessarily like create fear in me that he was kind of in danger of going back to his old lifestyle or anything like that, because I trust him. But these are the things that are like kind of not giving any opportunity for Satan. So is it necessary for him to just have to have a beer with me? Absolutely not. That's not necessary. I think that he has enough self-control, but it's just a boundary just to be able to safeguard ourselves and not give Satan that foothold. And then I think the more comfortable that we get in these spaces, then we know when we need to adjust and what that needs to look like. But it's better to start off with the reins a little bit tighter, you know, and to build that discipline than to just open yourself up to the world of possibilities and then find yourself trying to rein yourself back in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a little bit of what this has looked like for us in different seasons. I definitely feel like when it comes to just like being unified and having that as the foundation, Aaron and I started off on a great foot from that standpoint because we were so open and transparent from the beginning about our lives, what came with us, what each person would be getting themselves into with us, and we chose to accept that. And so since we chose to accept one another, now we're choosing to do life in a way that's going to help us both remain faithful in these different areas. So
going back to what Shell was saying, you know, about how I went through a program, I decided to stay on for a year because I wanted to give back to others what God had given to me. You know, God empowered me, He delivered me, and I want other people to experience that. So, you know, the same with me and Shell. God brought me this wonderful, godly woman, you know, God ordained and anointed, and I see what God's done in my life through her. So we as a couple want to be able to give that back to others, you know, hoping that you guys will find godly relationships that you can grow in and have the same blessings that God blessed us with. And I mean, boundaries are different. I think it's a really great topic. You know, boundaries are different for everybody in every relationship. So, you know, I'd love to hear more about your boundaries in your relationship.
Absolutely. Definitely comment below. Let us know what this has looked like for you in a dating relationship, in marriage, whatever the case may be, or if there are any pointers that you have taken away for a future relationship or for your current relationship. Would definitely just love to hear about what was helpful and what's working for y'all out there for the benefit of the masses as well. So that's it for today, folks. Also, don't forget to connect with us in community. There are links in the description box to join both the women's and men's Facebook community with us. We would love to see you there so we can keep you in the loop of just all the things that we have going on and coming up to serve you all. Until next time, folks, we are out. Bye, y'all.